Hello everybody, meteorologist Jacob Campbell here with your WeatherNow forecast for Monday. So I will be giving you basically the forecasts for Tuesday and Wednesday. I apologize for not uploading a forecast on Friday. It was a little hectic and I wasn't expecting it to be as hectic as it was, but I should be uploading more regularly now that we're past this past weekend. Finals are coming up, however, so around finals time these forecasts might be a little thin, to say the least. So, anyway, these are the temperatures on Tuesday, and so you see these little areas that are starting to move in here of 30-degree temperatures, and the big story this week is there's going to be a blizzard in the upper plains and the upper Midwest Great Lakes region. Very, very late season blizzard, and so we've got areas of Minnesota, blanking on the name for a second, North Dakota and the upper peninsula of Michigan in these little 30-degree areas, as well as here in the Rocky Mountains. And then pretty much south of there's not really much of a gradient here. And this is where the low pressure system is really starting to build up. You got a little cold front starting to form right here where temperatures jump almost immediately from the 50s to the 70s. Oops, here we are. From the 50s to the 70s, and then they jump almost immediately again to the 80s. And so you can see a really strong cold front starting to form here as this low pressure system in the area intensifies. And you see the little cold sector above where this would be a warm front, where the temperatures jump from the 70s to the 50s again. And there's going to be a massive intensification from Tuesday night into Wednesday, and you'll see that on the temperature maps clear as day. So the majority of the country, though, is going to be nice and warm. Temperatures throughout much of the Midwest will be in the 60s, and south of the Midwest it'll be the 70s and 80s and even some 90s. There were some 100-degree temperatures in parts of Texas, which, as you can see, I don't really have it on my scale up here, so I'm going to have to do something about that. But there were some 100-degree temperatures popping up here in parts of Texas and Arizona, and so they were very localized and very small, but they were there. So if you live in those areas, just know it may itch up to about 100 degrees with all that warm air coming in from Mexico. Also, South Florida, the Miami area, you guys are also going to be in the 80s. New England is going to cool off a bit, 30s in Maine and New Hampshire, and then Vermont, New York, and the rest of these little New England states, are all going to be in the 40s and 50s. So cool day for them. And in the Northwest, the same sort of story. In Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, you guys are along the coastal regions. You guys are going to be in the 50s. And then as you go more inland in the American Northwest, you guys are going to get into the 40s and 30s if you're in the mountainous areas. So this is what I'm talking about. That low strengthens incredibly. It intensifies very quickly, and it's just sucking all of this cold air from Canada into the system. And so you can now clearly see the cold sector of this storm. You can clearly see the cold front here, where temperatures in just like not even half a state go from temperatures in the 30s to temperatures in the 80s. And so that is a very strong cold front. And what you're going to see is you'll see some thunderstorms popping up along this cold front. Some could be strong to severe. And along the warm sector, but where the warm and the cold sector meet to the north, you're going to see blizzard-like conditions. And notice these are highs, and this is high temperatures for Wednesday. You're going to see blizzard-like conditions throughout this area in here, which I've got another slide with that map on there. But very, very quick jump from 30s to 80s and then to 90s. So this is a very strong cold front and a very strong low pressure system that will be pushing through the country. And you see that it's even affecting temperatures way out to the east through Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and then it finally around Ohio and Pennsylvania starts to stop having an effect, and so you start to see the gradient really come back again. But where these lines are really thin, that's where you're going to see your precipitation, that's where you're going to see your thunderstorms. And essentially the cause of this is we had that little shortwave that came through last week that brought the severe storms to the essentially the south, the Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas area, and now it's pushing off to the west, to the east, where the East Coast, the southern East Coast, is really going to experience a lot of the thunderstorms that shortwave brought through. Well, this is a larger shortwave. This shortwave extends mostly like down from Canada down to about New Mexico and then back up to Canada. So this is a very large pooling of cold air, essentially. So we're going to get some very strong convective systems where warm air is trying to move up above the cold air. And so you've got convective snow, which means that you could have thunder snow in some areas where this blizzard is coming through. And so if you've got a convective snow event, that means that you are likely to have blizzard-like conditions as well as thunder snow and just heavy snow in general in those areas. And so that's what this shortwave is really doing, is just pooling cold air on top of a mass of warm air. And now they're trying to switch places because warm air likes to rise. And so we're going to see those. Here we go. So we've got this this little, I call it a snow track of snow. This is essentially the total snow that you could see from Monday to Wednesday. And so we've got these areas of heavy snow, this little band here, which is you're most likely to find these blizzard-like conditions in these areas. So Idaho Falls, Idaho Falls, Salmon, Idaho, just west of Sioux Falls, and really, I mean, it's missing some of these larger city areas. But if you live in these areas, you can expect snow up to a foot or even 16 inches in places. Then if you live in this other band, this little medium snow band, you could expect anywhere from about 6 to 10 inches of snow. And so while, yes, it is medium, it's medium for this storm, that's still a lot of snow for you guys. And then in these lighter bands out here, you guys can just expect anywhere from a dusting to about 4 inches of snow. And so that's pretty much what you're going to look for. So if you're in Denver, Salt Lake City, Boise, Great Falls, you can all expect some of these like lighter snow bands coming through. If you live in Sioux Falls, if you live in Rochester, Minnesota, if you live in, I can't read that, if you live in Casper, Wyoming, or Cheyenne, you guys can expect anywhere from about, like I said, 4 inches to about 10 inches. So very, very heavy snow system moving through the area. And so just be careful, stock up on food if you need it, so on and so forth, and be mindful about how much snow is falling. Moving on to the storm risk, we have that shortwave, like I was talking about earlier, moving out. And so we've got areas on the East Coast here through North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia in a slight risk for severe storms range. And it looks like wind and hail are going to be the main threats. Isolated tornadoes maybe, but it's mainly going to be wind and hail. Then we've got this marginal risk area from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, parts of Alabama, and Florida. And you can just expect maybe some small hail and some strong winds, but it's going to be a lot more sparse than if you're living in this slight risk area. Then we've just got a general thunderstorm risk for actually pretty much the rest of the East Coast up to New England, and then into the Gulf Coast here in Alabama. And so if you live in here, you might get some thunderstorms, nothing too severe, nothing really to worry about in those areas. Then if we come out west, we see the area where this low pressure system is starting to form. It will start with storms, and as those storms move through, it will cool down, and then you'll get those areas of intense snowfall as the area cools. And so you're going to see areas throughout the country really that have some slight risk areas along this low pressure system, and you would expect that there might be snow or that it might not be as severe because you have the snow, but because this is a short wave, and this is actually a large short wave, as funny as that sounds, you've got some pretty strong convection happening in these systems. And so if you have strong convection but you don't have the temperatures for snow, and it's warmer than freezing, you can expect some thunderstorms, because thunderstorms are just, convection outside of freezing. And so these areas in here can expect to see thunderstorms. So moving on to Wednesday, we've got that first short wave has moved out, and so now it's out in the ocean. And now we've got this area where the short wave is moving through this big new one that's going to bring thunderstorms to a lot of the Great Plains and parts of the Midwest. And so in this general thunderstorm risk area, Illinois over to Wyoming and Colorado, you can expect just some general thunderstorms. But then there's this little bullseye area in here, a marginal risk in Nebraska and Kansas, and then a slight risk also in Nebraska and Kansas, and parts of Iowa, parts of Missouri. If you live in these areas, you might see some hail or some damaging winds. Tornadoes don't look to be very likely at this point, because the dew point isn't quite high enough to sustain those updrafts. It looks like wind is going to be the primary threat and maybe some hail. So that's pretty much all that you guys are going to have to worry about in there. There may be some isolated tornadoes, but I highly doubt it because there's not enough moisture, and there's not enough moisture essentially and warm air to essentially trigger thunderstorms capable of producing tornadoes or large hail, but it looks like hail and winds are going to be the primary threat. So I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Thank you, and have a good one.